term ICE riots is not an official historical classification, but is used by some to describe the widespread protests, civil disobedience, and at times, unrest that erupted in response to the actions of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. These incidents occurred primarily during the late 2010s and early 2020s, amidst growing tensions around U.S. immigration policy, especially under the Trump administration. These events marked a turbulent chapter in American social and political discourse, revealing deeply held divisions over national identity, human rights, and law enforcement. ICE was established in 2003 during a major restructuring of national security agencies after the September 11th attacks. Operating under the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, ICE's responsibilities include immigration enforcement, investigating illegal immigration, human trafficking, and customs violations. Over time, ICE became a symbol of the federal government's approach to immigration control, especially under stricter enforcement policies. Critics argue that ICE operates with limited accountability, often prioritizing deportation over due process or humanitarian concerns. Supporters, however, view ICE as essential for upholding immigration law and national security. This sharp divide laid the groundwork for widespread protest. Public outrage reached a boiling point in 2018 when the Trump administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy, which led to thousands of children being separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border. Images and audio recordings of crying children, held in cages, circulated widely in the media and online, sparking national and international condemnation. The outcry was swift. Protests erupted in dozens of cities, targeting not only the administration but ICE as the enforcement arm of these policies. Demonstrators demanded an end to family separations, the reunification of affected families, and the abolition of ICE itself. The phrase "abolish ICE" quickly became a rallying cry, appearing on protest signs, social media, and political platforms. The hashtag #AbolishICE movement gained momentum through grassroots organizing and high-profile endorsements from progressive politicians and activists. Organizers cited a pattern of abuse, racial profiling, and unnecessary detentions as reasons for the agency's dissolution. Critics also pointed to ICE's collaborations with local law enforcement, arguing that these partnerships created fear and distrust within immigrant communities. Protesters staged sit-ins, office occupations, and marches outside ICE facilities. Encampments appeared in cities like Portland, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles, with demonstrators refusing to leave until their demands were addressed. Some of these encampments lasted for weeks, creating logistical and political challenges for local authorities. While many of the protests remained peaceful, some escalated into confrontations. In several cities, protesters clashed with local police or federal agents while attempting to block ICE operations. These confrontations sometimes turned violent, leading to arrests and allegations of police brutality. In Portland, for example, an occupation outside the local ICE facility resulted in a major federal response. Protesters were forcibly removed, and the crackdown reignited debates over the use of federal force in local jurisdictions. Civil liberties groups raised concerns about surveillance, excessive force, and the militarization of law enforcement in response to what were largely nonviolent demonstrations. Another major issue driving the protests was the condition of ICE detention centers. Reports of overcrowding, lack of medical care, abuse, and even deaths led to widespread condemnation. Detainees, including children, were allegedly denied basic necessities such as soap, clean water, and proper nutrition. Whistleblowers from within ICE and DHS added credibility to these claims, further fueling public outrage. Investigations by journalists and human rights organizations painted a grim picture of life inside these facilities. Some centers were found to be operated by private prison companies, raising questions about profit motives in immigration enforcement. The ICE riots and broader protest movement sparked a political firestorm. On the left, many Democratic politicians began calling for major reforms, if not the outright dismantling of ICE. Lawmakers like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley became vocal advocates for the abolition of ICE, arguing that the agency had strayed far from its original mission and was causing more harm than good. On the right, Republicans and conservative media figures defended ICE, portraying the protests as lawless and un-American. They emphasized ICE's role in removing criminals and protecting national security, often conflating undocumented immigrants with criminal activity. The stark contrast in rhetoric reflected deeper ideological divisions within the country. Media coverage of the ICE protests varied dramatically depending on the outlet. Progressive media often highlighted the human suffering caused by immigration enforcement, showcasing stories of separated families, traumatized children, and longtime residents deported without warning. Conservative media, by contrast, focused on the more chaotic aspects of the protests, such as vandalism or clashes with police. This polarized coverage contributed to a fragmented public perception, with Americans increasingly divided not just over the issue itself, but over the very nature of what was happening on the ground. Social media played a crucial role in organizing and spreading awareness of the ICE protests. Viral videos, hashtags, and real-time updates allowed activists to bypass traditional media and mobilize supporters quickly. Hashtags like #AbolishICE, #FamiliesBelongTogether, and #CloseTheCamps became digital rallying points. However, social media also amplified misinformation. False stories and edited footage were sometimes used to discredit protesters or exaggerate events. This further complicated efforts to find common ground or even agree on basic facts. While the intensity of the protests has waned since 2020, their impact continues to be felt. The Biden administration made several moves to scale back aggressive enforcement tactics, including limiting ICE's priorities for deportation and attempting to close some detention centers. However, critics argue that meaningful reform has been slow and insufficient. The conversation about immigration enforcement is far from over. The protests fundamentally reshaped public discourse, placing pressure on politicians and elevating immigration justice as a major electoral issue. For many, the ICE riots symbolize the power of grassroots resistance. For others, they represent a breakdown in law and order. The ICE riots were more than just a series of protests. They were a flashpoint in a much larger struggle over America's values, identity, and responsibilities. They revealed a nation grappling with its past, questioning its present, and uncertain about its future. Whether remembered as necessary resistance or as moments of chaos, these events mark a significant chapter in modern American history, one that continues to inform the debate over who gets to belong and who gets to decide.